Hello, everyone, and welcome to Theory into Practice. I am Dan Scott, and today I'm actually very excited for the episode. I got a returning guest and a new guest at the same time. And the topic today is actually one that interests me very much, but I know that many of you out there who are listening to this and have the same kind of background are interested in it as well. It's a little bit more about risk management and how it kind of relates to some of the things that we're doing in emergency management, but overall the leadership that goes in behind it and the initiative that has been taken on by these two individuals in community outreach is amazing. And so I'll welcome back my returning guest, Marcus Haynes. So Marcus and I go back a long way. He gives me a hard time. He's already, telling me I look old because of all the gray hair, but he's bald. So we'll go from that. But but I'm very happy to have him back. He's working on a project, as we've heard from him before, but on local outreach, in community outreach, and building government, and retaining employees, and all that goes behind that. Well, he's partnered up with Mel Thomson, not Thompson, to work on this project, and they've got it and they're ready to tell us about it. So I'm going to invite them to tell them kind of a brief bio about themselves, and then I'm going to start asking questions about this topic. But I guarantee you're going to enjoy it. So welcome, Mel. Welcome, Marcus.
Well, thank you, Daniel. Thank you for having us again. It's pretty awesome to be here, and obviously your podcast does a great job of supporting and encouraging the growth of others, and so I definitely recognize that. So it's pretty exciting that you give these opportunities out. So I'm Marcus Haynes. I work for the Phoenix Fire Department. Been with them for 17 years now, and firefighter, paramedic, and hazmat tech. I was lucky enough to get on a special assignment in our safety and prevention, and that's when I first met Mel, who works, and she'll introduce herself, but she works in our City of Phoenix risk officer, and she was helping us with a lot of critical things that we had going on within our fire department on trying to strategies on prevention of major issues, whether it be human capital all the way down to vehicle collisions. And so she was pivotal in trying to create these systems and programs for us while I was in safety and prevention, so that way we can get ahead of it, reduce the liability to the organization, as well as some of our membership. So for me, she's been an outstanding mentor, and so it's pretty exciting to be able to bring her on here and have her speak about some of this emerging topics that's going to be extremely valuable to multiple disciplines, but a lot of local, state, and county government. So, Mel, all you.
Great. I appreciate it. Thank you, Marcus. And thank you, Daniel, for having me on. And this is my first time being on here, so I appreciate you guys having me. But, really, I've been in risk for quite a while. I started at state parks, where we started to looking at operational risk and what that looked like. And then I went to the state of Arizona, where I was at the Department of Administration, where we looked at risk all across over 120 agencies. So 150,000 employees, which was pretty fantastic. And then now I came to City of Phoenix the last 2 years in their risk management department. And it's interesting because, looking at traditional risk and enterprise risk are completely two different things, which we'll get into. But I'm just glad to be here. And thank you, Daniel, for having us.
Awesome. Well, again, welcome, and I'm looking forward to where the conversation goes and learning more about enterprise risk management. So ultimately, right off the bat, Mel, tell us what it is.
You bet. Really, enterprise risk management is looking at your risks across the entire landscape. So if you've got an organization, you've got a city or a county or state or any organization, you're looking at that through your top risks, but also how it impacts every single department. And it can be your internal stakeholders as your external stakeholders. So when you think of how you look at risk, you realize that you got to bring people to the table. And that's really what this does, is that, social media, it has tried to connect us, but really it's disconnected us. And so this is even more need for it, because we have got to make decisions together. And that's really what enterprise risk management does, where you've got traditional risk that is your insurance policies and your claims, and pretty much every organization has. It gets misled because they think that it's enterprise, which is completely different. And we're looking at a proactive approach, not after the loss happens. We're looking before the loss happens, and we're saying, what can we do with these new binoculars of ERM? We got a risk charging for us, or it's simmering, or it's bubbling up. What can we do to work together and look at managing that risk? So it's a completely fresh approach to how you manage risk.
There's a level of prevention aspects that goes into it you know, when it comes to thinking about insurance and thinking about activities that can prevent and having preventative measures. I mean, with health insurance, for instance, you know, you got preventative medicine, and a lot of that stuff is taken care of. So talk about a little bit just about the preventative side of things with emergency management, and even leadership. We want to talk about how do we prevent certain things from happening, or prepare for things to happen, or respond when they do. And enterprise risk management seems to be thinking on a larger scale.
Oh, absolutely. So, we have people that come to the table with different solutions or projects or programs. And one of the first questions is, do we want to do this? And how do we manage this risk, right? So we might want to try something out, but every choice carries an element of risk, every decision that we make. So when we look at that, we say, all right, how much risk are we willing to take on if we're going to be looking at maybe a different way that we're going to service the public, or a new protocol through emergency management? How do we want to build in innovation, but how much risk are we willing to take on in order to get that innovation and to meet our goals? And so it's a question of not just go run and do it, and then we'll worry about it later. And if the claim hits, the claim hits. But taking a careful approach to say, do we have everybody in the room to figure out what our risk tolerance is? And then what flag do we have in place if we need to pump the brakes and reconsider? Or are we willing to take on a certain amount of risk, and what does that look like in order to meet that objective?
Well, speaking of doing things without thinking about it, Marcus, how did you get involved with ERM, with the enterprise risk management? Because it's a big step from, you know, firefighter to risk management, enterprise risk management. What brought you into the realm?
Asking for forgiveness than permission. No, no. So we had already been working. Mel and I had already been working on some of the smaller projects within the city or the department, which is, how to avoid some of the basic vehicle collisions. But part of which we'll talk about probably a little bit later on, is the larger grand challenges of government issues was human capital issues and struggles. And when I would talk to Mel about risk management, her concepts were holistic, which is definitely falls into EM, which is some of the training we've had, right, in your experiences. And her approach was to build up the capacity from inside the organization to then help and make good risk and be more efficient in our customer service delivery outside. So I liked the approach of building up the capacity of that human capital, build up your workforce to deliver what you need to the community, right? Because you can always say, it seems like a lot of it is outward face. We want to know what the community needs, but what they need is for us to be efficient, effective, to understand our risk and make good decisions. And so her approach was definitely something that I thought the fire department could have utilized. And so in August, she put together this outstanding risk workshop. And it was so cool because we had, I think, 18 different middle managers to upper level directors that showed up, and we utilized the EOC for this particular training in this workshop for 2 hours, from emergency management, public works, IT, HR management and development. We had the management fellows, and we had fire department and a police officer all show up in this room to go through a workshop of human capital risk. What happens if you don't retain your employees? For 2 hours. And it was awesome to watch these middle and upper management people show up and engage in this conversation in this workshop. And not only that, but we had every generation represented, all 4 of them. So we had all the demographic, all the generations. We had we didn't have all of our city departments, but we had a good snapshot. And then we had 100% engagement from everybody in there. Not about what they were doing and what their solution was, because she controlled that audience, but what it is we all perceived it to be. And by the end, we got this outstanding report of how we all looked at human capital risk, what we agreed upon, what we didn't. So that was a huge success. And it was so successful that she was able to do even more assessments within the fire department, and she's got more coming. So all the executive team is getting this thing, and Daniel's probably much as anybody else, the fire department is very culturally rigid sometimes about how we're doing things. And she went in, she had an opportunity, and she has been successful. So it's very exciting that, because it's going to be better for our organization and all the other departments around, since we're probably the first fire department to really delve into ERM as a primary means of reducing the uncertainty that we don't know we're going to have to face on a time where we know we don't have enough resources. And so Mel could talk more about the workshops that she's done, but that's how we utilize it in the fire department to try to increase the capacity and decision making of leadership, and kind of reduce that risk and how we're delivering it to the community.
Yeah, that's great. An open mind, keep going into it, with having people actually change their thinking a little bit, to be more open-minded to change, more open-minded to hear alternate ways of doing things. Sometimes first responders aren't the best audience to go into and talk about changing the way they've done things for so long. But it is definitely a change, is something that I believe in wholeheartedly, not just in first response, but in general across. We change and we evolve, and hopefully improve and contribute to our surroundings and our society and our relationships. And Mel, and just so you guys, everybody listening here is aware, they're going to be talking more about this at the January 24th Leadership Summit, which is going to be amazing. So we're going to get to hear a little bit more about that. And I'm gonna guilt her into kind of doing a kind of a workshop for me and my group. So everybody kind of do a writing campaign to help me with that. But yeah, building that. But what I want to understand a little bit too is that, and I want to explain this about Marcus. So Marcus, overall, his background is fire, but he had a curiosity for EM, learned EM, but applied and went and learned leadership. And on top of that, he's got fire background, he's got EM knowledge, he's got leadership knowledge, he's got education knowledge, he teaches, and to bring all that and together for this initiative. And he's a visionary thinker. How has that been with Mel, with contributing the risk management side with the emergency management side, mixed with some first response and overall leadership?
Well, and that's a great question, Daniel, because really it had to be, we can only build our champions throughout the city if we find people like Marcus. So if you have somebody that has previous knowledge and a background and expertise, and really has the passion to see how this connects together, and you have the trust, and he trusted us to say, hey, I'm going to put these people together and we're going to make this happen. And because he trusted us, we'd had enough conversations to say, okay, we're kind of on the same page with, what he's doing, what we're doing. We want to kind of get this all aligned and to produce that value. And so, he's taught me a lot about emergency management and fire, and, how they do things. And so we've been able to marry kind of the best parts of the professions and put them together. But we could have never done that without having that trust. And that comes from who Marcus is he wants to get better. He's got these skills, and we want to transition those into value. So it has been wonderful working with him, and we're just getting started. So we have a lot of work ahead of us.
Awesome. So Marcus, so tell us how, in what you've done, in the work you've done, and the kind of the overall vision you have on how, enterprise risk management can be not just used, but ultimately utilized and optimized as it relates to emergency management.
I think the ERM has some of the same mission and objectives, which is to work holistically in organization, right? So that way, everybody, you're breaking down the silos, and EM has to work across all all the different disciplinaries to support them and be resilient, right? And that's what we're looking for, is a resilient organization, which is what ERM is probably, hoping to achieve, is going to be a resilient community. And so what I saw the correlation between EM was that you have your mission areas, you're looking at it, you're looking at the community, you're looking at stakeholder partners, you're looking at the individual departments, and you're trying to prevent, you're trying to exercise it, and then you have the response piece, and then you got to recover, right? And what ERM was doing is she pretty much brought in some of the same, it's the same concept of we got to come together, but the way she has done it with her workshops is she has eliminated groupthink and allowed people to talk and collaborate across these department disciplinaries to find out what exactly people do, right? And so you get the perspective, the high level perspective and responsibility of the EM professionals, the emergency management professionals, and you get the department and the response piece of that and how they're going to be thinking about it. And she puts it all together, rolls it into risk, which everybody understands, everybody's language, with how she calculates the workshops and how she utilized the clickers. She has clickers, which is outstanding. So everybody doesn't have to feel like they're the one left out because they didn't agree. And so she facilitates this thing, and you get the maximum product, which then gives you a result that everybody understands, regardless of where you came from, your background, your rank, how you feel, your ego, whatever it may be. And so that is what EM hopes to accomplish, is when you have an emergency, we all come together. You're in your role. We communicate through that, right? We put everybody in the same room, communicate those roles, so that way we recover, we're resilient, and that we are showing up as professionals to that. So she is just coming with a different process of getting to that point, right? Through a workshop, which then can just, I believe, and Daniel, you know more about this because I haven't wrote any, but if you're trying to figure out your COOP plan, right? Whatever it may be, your THIRA, this is a workshop that can help lead and roll into your continuity of operations, your THIRA plan, whatever it may be, because it's risk management, which ERM can also be, everybody's a risk manager. Everybody needs to understand it. But what I also like about ERM is it is, there's a big people driven piece of this thing. It's not just a process or a thing. There's a big human capital piece, which is, I think, rare in a lot of policies and processes and stuff, where you have to get people to tell how they feel, how they understand certain concepts, so you can understand the gaps, but to then put numbers behind how they're feeling. So you're saying you're covering all your bases. Your workforce has to go out there. This is how they feel about it based off of the workshops. And your plan is then educated a little bit better by that. So, I mean, that's kind of how I think of it and how it correlates, but it's all about, we've got to get rid of the silos. We have to talk to each other, because at the end of the day, we all want to go home and we want to enjoy our life, but we also want to serve. And no one department serves the entire community. So in order to not do that, what she does is recognize that you have this perspective, and in that room, you realize that the perspective of the person from Public Works is invaluable to completing the mission. You need to have that in the room. And she has been completely successful of getting each discipline to talk in that room on the level playing field and treat each other like they should be treated. And so that's how I kind of feel it relates the most.
Well, yeah, it's a great kind of leeway, because emergency management in general, it's about whole community, it's about collaboration. And we're hearing, now it's the new key term that's, picking up is resiliency. Nobody really knows what it means, so it's about resiliency, being resilient, and having a resilient community. But more than that, I mean, what really drew me to this topic overall, and what you guys are doing here, is that, yeah, they're heavily related, risk management, emergency management, but you can put that together with many of the public safety type of industries. They kind of relate to each other, but they don't necessarily work or collaborate with one another. And breaking down silos is always been something that in my lifetime anyway, that's always been a problem. And people working in silos, it causes issues when there's no communication. And emergency management in general, yeah, they work with everybody. They got their touch of everything, but being able to bring the concepts in in a lot of them are the same concepts. Prevention, preparedness, resiliency, recovery, even response to a certain level. But the training that goes behind that too, there's a little bit different in risk management when it comes to the calculations and rankings and numbers and evaluations. Emergency management, we do it as emergency management with doing certain risk and threat and risk and hazard assessments. That help us with our planning and help us with the emergency operations plans or mitigation plans or COOP. But there is a level of risk management that has to go into that when it comes to, okay, how big of a number do we put on this based on the likeliness that it's going to happen, and how do we prepare for that? And if it does happen and we're not prepared, what does that mean? If it does happen and we are prepared, what does that mean? And how resilient, how quickly can we bounce back? All these are things that we take into account when we're thinking about the planning process, but actually doing it, I think a lot of it, and what I really liked about what you guys are doing is the leading it into a plan of action, like actually making the call to action to actually make somebody feel like, okay, I can do this, and doing it. I mean, the name of my podcast is Theory into Practice. I want that spread wide, is that we need to stop just talking about this stuff, stop learning about things, and actually start going and applying them to what we do every day. And ultimately, that's how to be at the best service to the communities in which we serve. So, being from government services, ultimately, how is when we call them, just go out and abbreviate it to ERM, helpful in decision making in government?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because, like I mentioned before, every risk is a choice and every choice is a risk. And when we see the tight correlation between that with every decision that we make, that when government leaders are really faced with those complex issues and choices, and teams get frustrated because the choice hasn't been made yet, and they're struggling to make those decisions, well, what was really happening is that they simply do not have the right tools in place and the information they need to make those risk-informed decisions. And this is really where enterprise risk comes in, because it, like Marcus had mentioned, it's a holistic view of the risks and the data to help leaders make that decision. And so really, how can you make a decision if you fully don't understand the risks? And that's what these leaders are up against. And we saw that with the federal government back in 2008. So the 2008 crisis happened with the subprime mortgages. And 8 years later, we saw the impacts. So the Office of Management and Budget out of DC, they made mandatory out of the president's office, all federal agencies will have an ERM program. So they mandated it. That includes FEMA and, Department of Homeland Security. And so we've seen that happen. We've seen it happen in Australia, Canada, every province of Canada has ERM. And so really state and local are kind of the last ones to get on board to start bringing ERM into managing their risks. So it's amazing. We're one of the first in the country, in the city of Phoenix, to get going on it, but we're one of the last globally to actually accept it in state and local government.
Yeah, it's that in my, and that's just, I'm gonna speak opinion here. I don't want to, but it hurts me deep down that we take so long to make decisions that ultimately cost people their livelihoods, their homes, their lives, and time as well. I mean, the time it takes us to finally say, okay, we should do this. Just imagine how much more we could have done if we would have done it when we were told we should be doing it. And that's a big issue with working in government or anywhere really. In emergency management in general, one of the issues we face on a regular basis is, how do we justify things that have not happened yet, or that we have prevented but can't prove it? So it's like, when you're talking about prevention, or we're talking about preparedness, or we're talking about mitigation, people, it's really nice to see lights and sirens going to a scene, or lights and sirens on, they're responding to something, because you can see that happening. But when you got to do all these things in advance, and it costs money and time and multiple people power, not manpower. We can't say manpower anymore, people. people power to run all these things, but how do you justify it? And it's because you don't see it, right? And it's hard to get people to buy into something they cannot see. When you can turn it into something visible, like numbers on paper, predictions, predictive analysis to say this, here it is right here in front of you. I can show it to you. You have a much more authority behind your ask, right? To say, I need this, I need these resources, I need this money, I need these people, I need this program to be built. We need to do these things and bring that into action. So I 100% agree with that. And when it takes that long to do things, it just puts us further and further behind. I love that you guys are leading the way, but I hate that you guys are leading the way. That you guys are
Yeah.
that you guys are the ones that everybody should be doing this right now. So I love that you're doing it. And I love, so to be able to show that to those who are going to be coming in behind you, you are leading the way. But what I feel is definitely going to be one of the most beneficial aspects of this, not only what you're doing in your community, but what you're going to help others do for their community based on the work that you've done. So I love that. So I'm glad we were able to show that. But I wanted that call to action part of things, Marcus. I know that with the grand challenge, talk a little bit about that, and then talk about how ERM and that go together.
Yeah, so we have our second convening of the 12 grand challenges from the National Academy of Public Administrators and the local government 2030 initiative. So it's been outstanding and complicated, and so the subject that I'm still working on, and we're almost done as a team, a national team, is the grow resilient workforce. And so what we want is to have the recruitment, the retention, and the development of the workforce for all of the impacts that technology may have, or cutbacks that may have, or just changes to the government system that need to happen and will happen. And Mel has more information and documentation that shows that our greatest risk right now, even in 2023, is the same greatest risk. This is number one greatest risk in 2032, which is the recruitment and retention of talented employees. Where technology moves up and down the scale, right? Moves up a little bit more. Human capital, still number one in 2032 is what they're estimating from these international business journals and studies that they've done. So what we're trying to do is roll in, how do you retain your employees? How do you say they don't want to be here and justify that outside of just the fact that they leave and have numbers? And so that workshop we did on human capital risk and retention was outstanding in identifying what would happen if they didn't leave, which was impact to service delivery, and what's the impact, what's the level of risk of an impact of this service delivery to a disaster, to a call, to a major critical infrastructure issue. And then you come up with your risk scores and saying, if we don't do this, these are our greatest risk. So you could focus on the people, which is still going to be it's your greatest, it could be your greatest risk, your greatest liability, your greatest responsibility. And it's the hardest to manage because everybody's different. But on that note, what I like about the local 2030 initiative is what we're trying to do is give options and opportunities for people to learn different things, to grow, right, and develop. And what I found that even like ERM does, and we talked about it with Mel, is traditionally I think about risk. I think enterprise, and I'm thinking, oh, it's like something, it's a money exchange, like public works or water department. Yeah. And so what it really is organizational department, right? It's bigger, right? It's a corporate enterprise, right? You think corporation, but that's not really what it is. So I thought that was exciting, right? The ERM, the enterprise, organizational, the big picture type thing. But also it was what she was trying to deliver. And risk is usually under finance because it's all about the money. But ERM is not just about the money. So then we talked about, well, next time you get interns, how about you don't get interns traditionally from finance? Because what she needs is a holistic view. So her interns should come from emergency management programs, because she teaches the algorithm and the concepts, right? But it's not just about money. You have to engage people. You have to encourage them to think outside the box, but you have to look holistically, which is taught in the discipline of EM. You can't think isolated. They don't teach you, hey, I'm just going to teach you about prevention in that one mission area, and that's it, right? You got to learn all of it, see how they connect, as well as all the subsets of that. So there's always that consideration. And she's looking at that consideration is, why don't I get interns to do enterprise organizational risk management stuff that already come with the skill set or the development based off of education like EM that can look at all of it and say, this is how it all connects. And if she would just teach them, this is what risk is, but we're already doing it. EM's already doing it, right? So it just supports their mission and how they're moving it forward. But EM doesn't have to just be EM. Now you could be EM and be an enterprise risk manager.
Oh,
Yeah, and that's a great point. I just real quick on that, I'm excited that you said that, Marcus, because really, like you said, EM is going to look at not only the crises that they were trained to look at, but they're going to be looking at the impacts in environmental, in operational risk. They're going to look at reputational risk. They're going to look at all these things, and there's tons and tons of different types of risk that we're connected to. And it's not on our government level, but it's also on state and federal, and our external partners, our vendors, our volunteers, our public, all of that. And when we look at all of it, we can start building up public trust, which I hope we can talk about more on the 24th. But definitely, there's such a great niche for emergency management and how that can marry so well with ERM.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think but that goes also, there can be, it's kind of a catch-22 because, with EM in general, the levels of responsibilities continue to expand. And as you just mentioned, yeah, there's these incorporation of being a risk manager, and it applies to so many things. But we're asking too to take on more complex problems, such as the unhoused, the homeless epidemic, and how that seems to be going into more of the EM realm now too. And but that that does play right into that as far as like the risks that are there, and how do we justify not doing something versus taking action on it immediately. And I think that call to action is what's really important. But as a practitioner of emergency management, what does that mean to me to be able to, okay, I do emergency management, I learn emergency management, I do it on a daily basis. Now I got to learn a skill of risk management that in general would actually make me better at my job. So like learning those numbers, learning how to those calculations, learning how to justify my existence. And I think that's one of the areas where we struggle in emergency management right now, is justifying why we're needed and why we need to be there and why they need to have a program. It needs to be more than other duties as assigned, more than a part-time person, more than cross your fingers and pray. Like there's got to be that level of understanding on how I justify you needing me. So I think that's a big part of it. I think risk management, and especially what you guys are showing me here today, is going to be a huge part. And I look forward to being able to hear more about that on the 24th, so January 24th. For everybody who out there listening, we're doing the Leadership Summit, and they're going to present, and they're actually presenting our first presenters of the day. So we get to kick them off early, and you get to start the day strong. But Mel, overall, with the government and the leaders and emergency management professionals and risk management professionals, and how do we really engage in the area and where we're working more collaborative in what we do? And how do we really reach out and make those skills, like how do I learn more in my jurisdiction?
Yeah, you bet. And well, it really goes back to kind of what we were mentioning before, is that you had mentioned like the complexity of risks, right? So we have, we're not seeing risks that are just separate, where they are starting to compound with time, and they're not going away. We've got this new normal, it's not changing. So emergency management is even more critical. So we see that and we say, we have to get everybody around these risks. And so because of that, and what we've been doing, working with leaders in Washington, is that there's a group called the Association for Federal Enterprise Risk Management, and they're out of DC. And this year was the first year out of the 15 years they've been there to open up ERM to include state and local governments to start having those conversations about, the complexity of these risks and how ERM can develop into their own, they can have their own programs. So state and local outreach committee that we're forming, we're actually launching this month, was developed out of this national need to include every level of government to start examining their risks and start adopting them through ERM. So this committee, it makes these connections between federal, state, and local, and how do we engage, how do we share best practices and look at other educational opportunities to learn about ERM. So we have appointed seasoned practitioners who have been doing ERM for quite a few years, and they serve as our U.S. regional ERM representatives within their regions to start building this network for ERM state and local government. So we have a Western, Northeastern, Southern, and Midwestern. And if they want more information, they can go to AFERM, that's aferm.org/state and local and /, or they can simply reach out to me. And my email for that is outreach-slg@aferm.org. If they just want to look around, they can go to affirm.org and they can see what, all these federal agencies are working on, what kind of the thought leaders are coming out from their areas, to how they're managing risks within their own organizations.
And just so everybody's out there is listening, I will put those links into the show description. So if you're driving for whatever reason right now, or you can't get to it right now, just know that those links will be you'll be able to find them in the show description. Thank you for that, Mel. Marcus, where can people find you at right now? Other than in
Just on LinkedIn. Yeah, find me at home. No, just kidding. Find me at the station. Yeah, find me wherever you find me. No, yeah, just on my LinkedIn page, which I'm sure you'll have it attached if they wanted to look up more. That's how they could contact me. Would be it. But Mel is the popular one. I'm the backup dancer.
No, this is a team deal here. No, and they
So
can find me
yeah,
on
I
LinkedIn
don't
too,
really
so.
have much. That's all I have, Daniel.
Well, you're still evolving in the field of being a public figure. So it'll come, everybody. So out there, I will be sharing his LinkedIn. So if you want to connect with him on LinkedIn and direct message in there, you can. You can also hear more from Marcus from previous episodes of Theory into Practice and on the summit from the previous leadership summits that we've done. We will be hearing more from them January 24th at 8:15. They will be talking about exploring the enterprise emergency management in emergency services, government, emergency management type. We'll get to hear more about the research that they've done. And the links will be in that for everything that here to sign up for the summit or to reach out to them or just to go on their website will all be in the show description as well. As we round out here, do you have any final words that you'd like to share with the audience? See you
I
later.
just have to say, yeah,
nothing more to say to
yeah,
you.
yeah. Thank you. Reach out. It's pretty exciting. I think it has relevance, and it is coming, whether we want it or not. But it is shown to be very relevant to a lot of people, and especially with the uncertainty piece. So it's a pretty cool workshop that she's done. So I would say reach out if you're curious.
Well, I'm looking forward to definitely hearing more, and you guys should all be jealous because as soon as I stop hitting record, I'm going to get to talk to them a little bit more. Show up on the 24th because we are going to hear more from them, and it's going to be a great day all around. We got 9 speakers right now lined up for that day. 9 amazing speakers, I should mention, along with Mel and Marcus starting off the day with us, and then we have. Also, just so if you don't know, we have the weekly leadership training that we're doing. If you want to sign up for that, the link will be there as well. If you can get more information from us, and then we're ultimately going to be doing more summits and workshops throughout the rest of the year, and that's so there will be more to come there, more information there. If you are out there, ultimately, if you get anything out of this conversation, to understand that the complexities of the emergencies and of risk is not only are they building and compounding, they're cascading and they multiply, and you got to think when one thing happens, that's not the only thing that happens. There's all these other things that could contribute. And when we talk about cascading events, when one thing happens here and then it affects this thing and this thing happens, and then you have all these things going on at once, this is where emergency management, risk management can actually help you out. So take a look at those links. Show up on the 24th. The name of the show again is Theory into Practice for a reason. I want to bring these thoughts, bring call to action, and actually have it so that we can apply them in our day-to-day lives. And I think that the work that we've actually showed here today through Marcus and Mel is actually a one step closer to doing that. So let me once again just say thank you to my guests. Thank you to those who are listening today for this, and be on the lookout for more information to come on the summit. Sign up as soon as you can. The seats are limited, but I look forward to seeing you all there. My name is Dan Scott, and I will talk to you next time.